Being 7 p.m. on Wednesday, October 10th, 2018, I'd like to call the monthly meeting of the Lisle Library District Board of Trustees to order. Roll call, please.
Marjorie Bartelli.
Here.
Jay Fisher.
Here.
Richard Flint.
Here.
Thomas Hummel.
Here.
Liz Sullivan.
Here.
And Liz Twistek.
Here.
Longery Wang.
Here.
Quorum being present, move on to item 2 on the agenda, opportunity for visitors to speak. Visitors are allowed 5 minutes to address the board on any topic that they wish. Any visitors present wish to address the board? All right, seeing none, we'll move along to item 3, which is the consent agenda. Does anyone have any changes or amendments they would like to make to the consent agenda?
I will make you want a motion first, or do you want an amended? Just cut to the amendment. Well, I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda with one amendment, and that is for the Robinson Schwartz bill. There was a error on there. There was a bill for the Village of Lisle included in the payment. So I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda with the amended Robinson Schwartz invoice. Makes sense?
No, it doesn't.
Yes.
What
error?
error did
Yeah.
The Robinson Schwartz had a payment in the bills. I think it was for like $775, was it?
It was, the total bill was $775, but they
And
had
112 of it was for the Village of Lisle.
Right.
So we threw that back. So the amended amount is what,
$675?
is it 675?
Yeah, but we asked Robinson Shores to provide us with a new invoice, so we'll
So should we pull it out of the
probably, yeah.
payments?
Pull it.
Okay. So then I'll pull back that amendment for that motion, and I'll make a moment to approve the consent agenda without paying the Robinson Schwartz bill until next month.
Right.
There was a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There was a motion and a second. Discussion on the motion. All right, seeing none, roll call, please.
Longery Wang.
Yes.
Marjorie Bartelli.
Yes.
Richard Flint.
Aye.
Thomas Hummel.
Aye.
Liz Sullivan.
Aye.
And Liz Twistek.
Aye.
Great, motion passes. The consent agenda is approved as amended. Item 4 on the agenda is the director's report. Director Weinstein.
Okay, I'm going to kind of breeze through my report because I have a PowerPoint presentation, and I'm going to try to conserve my voice because the presentation is longer than my report. So September celebrated the library's 10th annual I Love My Library Card program. Our numbers of new registrants during September were on par with last year's numbers. But this year we had 38 local businesses and nonprofits who participated, and 9 of them being new ones, so that was good. And 22 businesses donated prizes for drawings throughout the year for us, so that was great. And every year, as I mentioned, patrons really look forward to this, and they wish it was longer than just the month of September. I also want to thank the circulation department because they really do a lot of prep work for this month of this reciprocal relationship between the businesses in Lisle and the library. Under training, last year, as you remember, we passed policy 901, that's our sexual harassment training. And per policy, both employees and trustees have to go through some annual training. So the employees this year, during Staff Development Day, participated in sexual harassment training. And LIRA, the library's insurance and risk agency, provided that training. LIRA has also provided a web-based training for the trustees. So I think as of, is it tomorrow or yes, by the end of the week, trustees will receive an online email invitation to view this webinar. And then you have the opportunity to print out a certificate of completion and we can file that.
So according to policy, is that required or is recommended for trustees to take the training?
Required every year. And so in other training news, the library department directors and managers and I participated in leadership workshop last Friday. Our focus was on communication, productivity, professionalism, and morale. And we haven't had this kind of training for like department heads since I've been in a supervisory role. So I'd like to do this every year. And we used HR Source, which is the new name for Management Association, to conduct the training. And then under the training umbrella, I also want to mention that trustees will very soon be sent some trustee fax file chapters, as we do every year for per capita. So you will also be viewing a webinar, another webinar via Rails, and this is again for our per capita application. The topic this year is meeting the needs of patrons with challenges or who are differently abled, those who are handicapped. Staff also have to participate in the training per the grant requirements, and so there's also another grant stipulation that staff and trustees have to be familiar with the Illinois Veterans History Project, so there's more to come on that. We do per capita grant in January, so I just wanted to give you a heads up. So you've got a couple of webinars headed your way, okay? And then under technology, the IT manager and I met with OSG, our outsourced tech firm, as well as our library catalog vendor, Polaris, and this is all part of preliminary work towards a technology plan for us, and I've listed some of the projects we're looking at. Just wanted to mention that most of the equipment has already been purchased for this through the past couple of months. The only additional expenses that we may incur are some OSG hours. So, and then the Lisle Women's Club and Operation Stand Down are hosting a donation box outside these doors right here. This is to support homeless veterans, so that box is accepting newly purchased or newly knitted scarves this year, and we are accepting donations through November 4th. I also wanted to mention an audit update. Our auditors were here in late September. It's a little later than they did last year, so we won't be receiving a report in the board meeting until December. We hope to receive some preliminary numbers though in November. And then I have an elevator update. I know Beth has a little bit more in her report, but I wanted to provide some clarity regarding our elevator. It is operating, but it has fluctuating functionality. So we have had some stalls. That's why staff are accompanying patrons, and that's why we have staff in the hallway there. That's why we're riding with them up or down. We have our walkie-talkie with us, so if it does stall, we can call another employee, and we have to like reset the elevator from a mechanical room in the circulation department. So I just wanted to make that mention. So it's working, but it's on borrowed time. We're also currently working with the fire prevention company to comply with village and state elevator codes. So we are currently working with Johnson Controls, not the previously stated fire prevention company, because we can utilize some existing equipment, and that will save us costs. So Johnson Controls company now owns Tyco, Grinnell, and a third, Simplex?
They were Simplex.
And so I guess that's a fairly new acquisition. And Simplex is our fire poles, and Tyco is our alarm system, and Johnson Controls now owns those companies. So working with Johnson Controls should save us costs. So we're going to be working with Johnson Controls to comply with our fire code, and we're also in conversation with the village in regards to elevator code. And then lastly, I would like to remind the public that the Friends of the Lisle Library book and media sale starts on Thursday, October 25th through Saturday, the 27th. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Are there questions for the director?
I want to make a comment about under the technology. So I think we discussed this before as a board about, whether we should have like a technology committee. I understand, some people probably don't want to have any more committees, but I think it's important enough where we're talking about resource allocations going forward as part of strategic plan that we maybe want to shift more resources toward technology investment. So I want to see if we could have a technology committee, and the reason being is also we may think about inviting a different mix of membership. So in addition to relevant staff and like the IT manager and some of the board members, could we also think about having some subject matter experts in the IT area to be part of it as part of the community service? And so we talked about before about in the past the technology committee was like rolled up to a physical plant or there's some discussion around that, but I just think there's a value to be a standalone committee. Maybe a subcommittee under the physical plan. So I just want to bring that as a discussion. And as we go forward, finalize our strategic plan, I think we should consider establishing a technology committee.
And I've heard from one other trustee that was interested in creating a technology committee. What does other members of the board think about that idea?
I mean, I think we could just keep it under, I think we just did a physical plan, I think we could take care of that.
I think it's probably the things that such a committee would do, and we have had one in the past. There's not a whole lot for it to do. Sort of things that we're discussing could be done, I think, better by administration.
Emily, do you have an opinion?
I think it's a good idea, just to focus solely on the technology piece and even like as a subcommittee, it doesn't need to be like a standing committee. It could just be, one that we put together for a little bit and then retire it once it's done what we needed it to do too. I think it depends on what comes out of strategic planning and where we go from there.
Marjorie, do you have an opinion on the issue?
I think I agree with Tom as far as the physical plant can handle it.
All right, so
I
seems to
mean,
be
I'm not-
a split, so let me go and talk to staff, get staff's input as well, and then maybe we can come back and talk about this next month. Decide if you want to have a standalone committee or create it maybe as a subcommittee or just leave it in the hands of physical plant. But thanks.
Yeah, and again, just one more comment is I think we can make it as ad hoc. If we have, for example, at the beginning of the year, we lay out what's IT strategy, what's infrastructure, even to say, hey, these are the top 10 priority lists that we want to execute. From administrative standpoint, then when they negotiate the vendors on updating some of the equipment, then that's not part of the committee's kind of a discussion or agenda. But I just feel the reason why we're thinking about have a different committee was just because we probably want to have a different kind of mix of people to bring more subject matter experts in a voice in the committee discussion. But again, just subject to the overall board consensus on this.
No, thank you for bringing that up, Marjorie. That said, I'll have discussions with staff and we'll get back and look at this again next month.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions for the director?
Jay?
Mhm.
Tatiana, the items mentioned under technology, are they reflected in the revised list that Beth provided?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you for this, but I thought most of it was, but not all of it, but if you say it is, then.
That's just what we're doing what we see in the next 3 months. We can only do this in phases.
In your report?
In the report.
Okay,
Yeah.
great, okay.
All right. Any further questions for the director?
Do you want to mention presentation?
The director had requested that we move her presentation till after new business. So I guess I'll make a motion to amend the agenda to move the director's presentation to after new business and before item 9. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I just want to say I'm asking this to provide better flow for the meeting because we have to turn off the lights. And this is a presentation on circulation statistics as well as some per capita expenses. So it just provides better flow, I think.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. The Assistant Director's report.
So, let's see. Last Saturday, the Lisle Library was transformed into a galaxy far, far away for Star Wars Reads Day. And this was our 6th year for Star Wars Reads Day at Lisle Library. This year's event featured a lightsaber craft, games, Star Wars trivia, face painting, and an interactive trash compactor. A special Millennium Falcon photo opportunity was available, and you could see the pictures on Flickr on our website. Many patrons, young and old, came in costume. And Star Wars Reads Day, we doubled our attendance over last year, so I think it shows it keeps building with success. The event team worked on plans for Winter Read, which will kick off on December 7th. We'll have hot chocolate, cookies, and music will be part of our special sign-up for that day. Talking about staff, our safety team and in-charge staff reviewed some of our tornado procedures, largely because we had several storm warnings in the district area last month. And October is Fire Safety Month, so we will be reviewing fire procedures and some fire prevention practices this month. Our digital outreach team has coordinated with other staff to make 10 short videos, and these are available on our library YouTube channel. And I just wanted to mention that the one that's very popular right now is in coordination with the PBS series Great American Reads. And also there was the Star Wars one that talks about Star Wars materials that are available at the library. And also, since that coordinated with our Star Reads Day, that's been popular. And as I mentioned, with Fire Safety Month, our electrician was here this past month and worked on some of our emergency lights, making sure they were all in, there were several that needed some repair. There was kind of several generations of emergency lights, so some of the older ones just needed to be replaced. And just again with the elevator update, as Tatiana mentioned, Johnson Controls will be doing our fire safety and the elevator recall work. They're coordinating with Coley Elevator. And Coley Elevator actually will be here tomorrow morning for some final engineering measurements. So we're moving along. And I think that's it.
Thank you, Beth. Are there questions for the Assistant Director?
Yes. When do you anticipate that the elevator project will be done?
I'll have to, we just requested a timeline, and they are starting their, with these final measurements, they can actually connect with the village for permitting. So once the permitting moves along, I think we'll have a better idea of the timeline.
So do we have like parts on order or anything, or are we still after the permit and then they will start the process of procuring the key parts and all that?
My understanding is the controller will be, ordered from Coley, and parts of the elevator recall need to work together.
Any further questions for the Assistant Director? All right. Hearing none, item 6 is committee reports. Treasurer Wang?
Yes, we plan to have a Finance Committee meeting on that's Monday, October 22nd at 11 a.m. So we'll be reviewing our investment policy. If anybody interested, we'll have more information to come.
What time was that?
11 a.m.
Does anyone have questions for the Treasurer about Finance Committee or the financials? All right, then, personnel policy.
Nothing to report.
All right, physical plant.
Nothing at this time.
All right, strategic planning. Our next meeting is set for
October 19th.
Friday,
Yes.
October 19th,
At 6.
at 6 o'clock.
PM.
Yes, PM, thank you. All right, any questions on strategic plan? Item 7 is unfinished business. I do not believe we have any unfinished business. Item 8 is new business. We have one item of new business. We need to approve resolution R18-04, a resolution to determine estimate of funds.
I move to approve resolution R18-04 to determine estimate of funds.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I second.
There is a motion and a second. We want a little background.
Sure, we do this every year. It's basically a form that states that we are compliant with the truth and taxation law. This is not our levy. This just states that we are not going to go for 5% or more in regards to our levy. So it's basically a form stating to the public that it's a not to exceed amount. The amount that's in the document is provided by the county. That gets sent to Ginger. It kind of looks like this. And we just use the amount. They use the taxes that we are receiving, and then they add 5%, and that's our not to exceed amount. So again, just a form stating that we will not exceed this in our levy. And this is not our levy. Our levy will be passed next month, and we'll have a broader discussion about that then.
Thank you. Are there any discussions or questions on the motion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Marjorie Bartelli.
Aye.
Richard Flynn.
Aye.
Thomas Hummel.
All right.
Liz Sullivan.
Aye.
Emily Swistat.
Aye.
Long Wang.
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0. We have approved resolution R18-04, a resolution to determine estimate of funds. Now we will move on to the director's presentation on our trends report.
Okay, Chris, can you get the lights, at least on this end of the building, and you might want to scooch. Okay, thank you. I want to be able to read. I have to be able to read. Okay. So as we all know, the library is in the middle of a strategic planning process. And presenting this information, I hope, will help shape our discussions or at least provide some perspective. And this report regards circulation statistics as well as some data regarding per capita expenses. It also involves comparisons between our library and other libraries who share our same population. So it's a big picture type of report. It covers a lot of ground, so I'm going to ask that you allow me to walk you through the PowerPoint, and we can dig deeper in a future meeting, like in strategic planning. Okay, so we'll start out with this is what the board and the public see every month in our packets. It shows material circulation, digital media use, equipment use. Oh, I'm sorry, I have copies of this for you all. Let me pass this out.
Here, I'll pass them.
Thank you. Sorry about that. You can follow along. It's very hard to see, obviously. It looks a little fuzzy too, Chris.
Thank you.
So we're trying to.
Okay, a little sharper.
Thank you.
Or maybe not. Okay. All right, so this is what the board sees. It does talk about material circulation, digital media use, equipment use, borrower information, program statistics, facility use, social media engagement. And on the right of each form, you see a year-to-date comparison as well as the percentage of change. We're all familiar with this. So all this information is good. But seeing this information in a broader fashion over a span of years, I think, should help us see trends, and that's what this report is all about. And we should also take a look at national statistics to see if we should be concerned or shocked or excited about our numbers in comparison with national statistics show. So in 2017, a report entitled Public Library Data Service Report, the PLDSR, was published in Public Libraries magazine, and it uses 2016 data, and that is the most recent data that's available publicly, so that's what I used here. So let's keep that in mind, but what it says is that nationally, overall circulation has trended down, spanning 2012 through 2016. There's been about an 11.4% decrease. Circulation per capita has decreased annually at the rate of about 3% since 2012. Over the last 5 years, library programs have grown at a rate twice the decrease in circulation. And electronic circulation is growing, but at a slower rate each year as compared to years prior. And then they say that declines in circulation may be in part due to the way they're being measured by different libraries, and also due to an overall decline in library usage mirroring the decline in unemployment rates. So the graph on the right there, you can see that the orange line shows the U.S. unemployment rate, and that the circulation and the library visits mimic that line. We can pretty much estimate that when times are tough, the library is in more demand because we are that safety net. When you're laid off or if you're struggling to keep up with technology, we provide those services, so we see more of an uptick then. But when times are a little less tough, the demand declines. The next slide shows that decline in visits here at the library. You can see that over 4 years, our visits have declined in line with unemployment. So between 14-15 and 15-16, you see a 2% decline. Between 15-16 and 16-17, you see a 5% decline. And between 16-17 and 17-18, you see a 3.5% decline in visits.
Just for clarification, those decimals are relative to the one to the left. They're not cumulative, right?
No, they're not. But we'll show cumulative down the line. Now again, this is not only due to the unemployment rate, of course. Another factor may be that patrons are utilizing the library in a different way, utilizing our collections in a different way. So let's look at our circulation statistics over a 4-year span. So when we talk about total circulation, we're talking about how our patrons utilize their library card and our materials and our resources. So when we talk about physical materials, we're talking about books, magazines, puzzles, movies, art prints, devices, video games, and so on. When we're talking about digital collections, we're talking about our e-media library, Hoopla, all those downloadable ebooks, audiobooks, movies, and music. And then when we're talking about resources, we're talking about our PCs, scanners, internet, and wireless access. So those are the circulation statistics we count to show use. So looking again at a 4-year span, we start in 14-15, and between 14-15 and 15-16, you see a 9% decline in physical materials. And then you see a 2% decline in PC and internet access, and an 11% increase in digital media use. Between 15-16 and 16-17, you see an 8% decline in physical materials, a 13% decline in PC and internet use, and an 18% increase in digital use. And then most recently, between 16 and 17 and 17-18, you see a 3% decline in physical materials, an 8% decline in PC and internet use, and a 22% increase in digital media. So you definitely see some upswings and some decreases here, but I do want to mention that the numbers on the left of the screen, those are the numbers of items and or checkouts showing use. And the next slide will show you another perspective.
Just to go back, not to interrupt, but
Sure.
that does show that obviously physical materials are still
That's coming.
big. Okay.
Yeah, the next slide shows that.
Okay.
So in showing between just 2 years, you can see that the bulk of our materials checkouts are about 80% of that continues to be physical materials. Digital materials is definitely increasing, but comprises the smallest piece of that pie for now. And again, what does this mean and why is it this way? We'll compare ourselves with national trends in upcoming slides, but we should also ask ourselves, is it due to our online platforms, or is it due to our physical space? There's a lot of questions. So moving on to facility, we also track the use of our meeting rooms. We track the use of our meeting rooms by the public, and that's what that red number shows. And we also track the use of our literacy room. You can see that between 14-15 and 15-16, the meeting room use was down 3%, and the literacy room use was up 28%. Between 15-16 and 16-17, the meeting room use was down 15%, and the literacy room use was up 31%. And between 16-17 and 17-18, the meeting room use went up 5.5%, as did the literacy room use. And we also have to remember those numbers on the left again. We are showing increments of 50, whereas in the previous slides we're showing increments of 50,000. So just keeping the perspective in mind. We also want to look at our programming numbers as a whole. So programming statistics include programs for youth, for teens, for adults, and it also includes our library-wide programming. So we track the number of programs we conduct as well as the attendees. You can see that programming has significantly increased over a span of 4 years. You can see between the years of 14-15 and 15-16, the number of programs have increased by 29%, and the number of attendees has increased by 21%. Between 15-16 and 16-17, the number of programs increased by 1.5%, so we were a little slower that year, and a number of attendees increased by 4%. And then most recently, between 16-17 and 17-18, the number of programs have increased by 21%, and the attendees have increased by 9.5%. So obviously this upward trend will probably plateau because programs require staff, they require space, they require promotion, etc. So there is a limit, as is there's always a limit to any service we provide, but I think we can establish that providing programming is well received here. And now honing the types of programs we provide is another set of statistics that we should look at too. We've upped the ante in terms of numbers of programs, and in part this is an experimental kind of process. I think we, as programmers, I think Will can attest to this, we're trying things out. So sometimes they fail, sometimes they succeed, And some had lower attendance, some have higher attendance. So then we decide on what to continue from year to year. So, but we are experimenting more. As you can see, we're providing more variety of programs and see what resonates with our patrons. So just as Beth mentioned in her report, some of our library-wide programs like Harry Potter Day or Star Wars Reads Day, we're finding that our patrons really like that kind of communal themed program. And so I think we're going to continue those. Okay, so now we'll look at national statistics. Again, I briefed you on some of these, but we'll look at them in comparison with us. And I'm using the PLDSR report statistics. And remember, we're looking at different sets of years. Theirs goes through 2016, ours goes through 17, 18. But I still think the comparisons are meritorious. I think they will provide us with good information here. So nationally, it says there has been a downward trend in overall circulation, about 11.4% since FY 2012. The library has shows a 16% decrease since 2014. And then nationally, there has been a significant growth in the number of programs, about 27.5% since 2012. And our statistics show a 58% increase since 2014. And then nationally, a 16.9% increase in attendees since 2012. And the library shows a 37.5% increase since 2014. So if you look at the graph to the right, we're on par with trends nationally while being slightly lower regarding circulation of materials overall and slightly higher on the programming numbers overall. So again, comparison is good with national statistics, but we also have to adjust our mission and activities with what our community responds to, just to keep that in mind. And regarding the programming numbers, there are a couple of quotes at the bottom of this slide from the PLDSR report and Pew Research report that talk about programming trends upticking nationally and preparing for adapting to this new surge for programming. So that means breaking down what's important regarding budgeting and staffing and space, etc. So the Pew Research report quotes references that the demand for teaching people digital skills and preparing to offer programming, we need to look for the most effective and efficient ways to do that because obviously that's in demand. Okay, moving on. So this brings me to another report that I found. It's called The Future of Skills, Employment in 2030. And when you think of 2030, it's really not that far away. It's like 11, 12 years from now, believe it or not. So this was put out by Pearson, Nesta, and Oxford University. It talks about how work will be impacted by the intersection of 7 megatrends. So number one being technology, big surprise, right? It's basically the rise of automation. That's at the top. The other 6 are globalization, demographic change, environmental sustainability, urbanization, rising inequality, and political uncertainty. So it's a very interesting report. The link is referenced up at the top of the slide if you want to read the full report. Highly recommend it. But most interesting about this report is that it refers to jobs and specific jobs, including libraries. So when you look at libraries, or librarians, teachers, instructors, trainers, this report predicts a 73% growth in these professions. There's a 26.96% uncertainty rate regarding growth and a 0% chance that these professions will shrink. So what does that say? What does that mean for us? The other quote on this page, in a Job Outlook article in Library Journal, it references this report stating that this information can help inform library leaders' strategic direction as they consider how to shape services to support people of all ages through a time of rapid evolution. How will patrons be impacted by these megatrends? How will they learn? What skills will patrons need to develop in order to thrive in this kind of environment? Again, this report is extensive, but I wanted to share the information about libraries and how we as an institution need to respond to these upcoming trends that they predict. in the workforce and the economic atmosphere during political shifts, etc. Okay, so let's summarize. LLD total circulation over a block of years is decreasing, as is the national trend. We're at 16% overall, and national trend is 11.4%. But if you just compare 16-17 and 17-18 data, LLD shows less annual decrease than the national trend. We're at 2.3% versus 3% per year, just in the last 2 years. And then as you remember this graph showing that 16-17 and 17-18 total circulation data. And then LLD digital media circulation is steadily increasing, and this contrasts with, if you remember, with the national trend of slower growth in recent years. When looking at LLD total circulation activity, physical materials constitutes 80% of our checkouts, with internet, PC, and scanner use at 12%, and digital media downloads at 8%. And that pie graph on the side there shows that breakdown pretty nicely. And then the number of LLD program offerings has significantly increased versus the national trend. Spanning a block of years, we're at 58%, where nationally it's 27.5%. And then the number of LLD program attendees has significantly increased versus the national trend. Spanning the block of years, that's 37.5 versus 16.9. Our meeting room use is flat. The data shows insignificant decreases and increases over a 4-year span. And then our literacy room shows increase over 4 years, about 77%. So a lot of info. So we've looked at the library versus national statistics. Now I'd like to look at us versus other Illinois libraries. So over the past year or so, trustees, staff, and members of the public have referenced comparisons between us and other libraries in Illinois. And I wanted to take the opportunity to hone down some of those comparisons using demographic data as well as the IPLAR data. Per capita expenses have also been brought up a lot lately, so I took the IPLAR population data from 16-17 and used that in some of this reporting. So, if you take a look at the map, you can see how many libraries match us in regards to population in Illinois. It's kind of surprised me. I didn't think it was only going to be 19, but it is 19, give or take about 2,000 people on either side of our population. So we're at 28,504, and we're looking at populations between 26,500 and 35. Although our new population in Lisle shows 29,554 per the new Village of Lisle census that was done in 2017. So just take that in because our district is larger than the village, but the village did perform this new census. So 18 other libraries match us, and that's the distribution across the state. So our next slide shows when you take the 19 libraries together and mash them up with IPLAR data, this is what you see. And so some of the criteria I'm referencing here, and we'll go through it. We're talking about staff expenditures, collection expenditures, total operating expenditures, per capita expenses, the hours we are open throughout the year, our square feet of space, full-time equivalents or FTEs, median household income, percentage of high school or higher degree, and then the percent below poverty. Our numbers show in yellow there. They show both the 16-17 population and then the new population. That was just the new statistical number provided by the census. That gives us a bit of a preview of the future. And then the numbers on the right there, that's in the little square to the right with the little orange, those numbers come from American Fact Finder, that's census.gov. Okay. I'm going to move on to this next one. I just want to let you know that this is not just IPLAR data, it's also including American Fact Finder information. Okay, So on the next slide, I wanted to kind of break it down. It's the same array of libraries, same numbers, but I wanted to break it down in terms of categorizing some of the data, in terms of similarities to us, just to make it a little bit easier to digest. So here you see the same libraries, same numbers. I've added a new column all the way to the right. That column highlights the number of things in common. You can see that using the 10 extra criteria provided, outside of just the population, because we all match the population, that we have the most in common with Batavia, Geneva, and Highland Park. It's where we all share more than half the criteria. Again, what does this mean? Do we like that? Do we want to strive to mirror other libraries on this list? If so, why? Sorry? Oh.
I moved the
Oh,
table
okay.
accidentally.
Okay.
We're going to put her out in the hall.
So there's a lot of questions about the comparisons, and we're not going to answer those tonight. But seeing the libraries that match us in population is a good starting point. So when I looked for similarities, I just want you to know how to read this. I think it's pretty self-explanatory, but you can see how I defined the parameters of calling another library similar to us in the row above the last row. So for example, the population is a 2,000 plus or minus number of people. Under staff expenditures, it's between 2 million and 2.8 million. Under collection expenditures, it's between 5 and 600,000. So, et cetera, across the board. Okay, so yeah, there's a lot of data here for the 19 libraries, but if we wanted to even hone it down even further just to the Chicago metro area, this is what this map would look like. Eliminating 5 kind of distant libraries and focusing on a closer to the northeastern quadrant of Illinois gives us 14 libraries then. And then that's what I've grayed out the ones that are a little bit further away. And they're actually ones where we don't have a lot in common, which I don't think is a big surprise. So
Are these all district libraries or?
they're a mix. They're mostly district though, actually. And you can see that in their names there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I grayed out those. And the next slide is a cleanup of that chart. So I took out the grays. So we've got a cleaner chart here of libraries that match our population and that are within the Chicago metro area. So we've got 14. We have the 3 that are still most similar to us that still show, and then we've got the others that show variances, whether they're higher or lower from our numbers. Again, this is a lot of information that we won't comprehensively analyze tonight, but we can use this information to broaden our discussion in strategic planning discussions. And there are other aspects beyond per capita spending that are important to talk about. There are innovations and other space-related issues that accompany IPLAR and FactFinder data. So these all contribute to the conversation regarding strategic planning and as well as fiscal planning. So I'd like to go through this last slide together and show some distinctions between our library and the 13 other libraries who match us in population. And I just want to say this, that most libraries have things in common. Most libraries have books, most libraries have digital collections nowadays, most libraries have seating space and some group study space, they have story times, programs, but no library is an exact match. So I've listed a few service differences and other newsworthy distinctions between us and the other 13 here. All of these references come from the library's respective websites or their newsletters or via phone conversations or confirmations that I've had with them. And some of the information may affect expense data in that particular library's future and may also explain some of the expense differences between us and themselves in the charts I've provided. So the first library being Batavia. The Board of Trustees has placed a proposal on their November ballot showing a proposed increase in their general operating tax rate amounting to about $662,000 increase. So that's very different from what we're doing. And the Batavia Library has 6 study rooms, a conference room, a large meeting room, and a cafe, and that's a significantly different use of space than we have. Cary Area Library has 3 study rooms, 1 conference room, and 1 large meeting room that may be divided. The library has a drive-up window where patrons can pick up and drop off during normal business hours. Chicago Heights, this is a library that's a village library, so they are appointed by the mayor. There are 9 members of the board. And then they have 3-year terms, and the library is closed on Sundays. So that could, again, these are some differences, so account for some of the expense differences. Frankfurt, the library has a 3D printer. The library has 4 group study rooms, 1 youth activity room, and 1 large meeting room that can be divided. Geneva, they're building a new library. It's going to be 57,000 square feet, 76 off-street parking spaces, a drive-up window, meeting areas, art gallery, outdoor reading spaces, and collaborative spaces. And then they look to open in the fall of 2019. Glen Ellen, the library has 8 group study rooms, 1 conference room, a larger meeting room, and a cafe. That's being built very soon. The library has a digital media lab where patrons can create music, and it also has a 3D printer. Grayslake, the library has a makerspace, 3D printing space, audiovisual lab, laser cutter, sewing machines. The library has 1 large meeting room that can be divided, a youth activity room, and 5 group study rooms. The library is closed on Sundays from May through September. Highland Park, the library has an audiovisual digital media lab, 3D printing. There are 2 group study rooms, 1 smart meeting room, and a mid-sized conference room, and an auditorium. And then Lansing, the library is closed on Sundays. The library has 3 group study rooms and 1 large meeting room. Prairie Trails, which is in Burbank, the library is closed on Sundays, and the library has 2 study rooms. And then Wakanda, the library has 3 group study rooms, 1 large meeting room, a 3D printer, a digital classroom, and an audiovisual studio. West Chicago has 2 group study rooms, a smart group study room, a large meeting room, a 3D printer, and a DVD converter. And lastly, Wilmette is open from 1 to 9 on Sundays, very long hours. The library has 4 group study rooms, 2 conference rooms, a large meeting room, and an auditorium space. So that brings us to the end of our slideshow, but I think just to the beginning of conversations and what all this data means for us, if anything. So after combing through all this data, seeing the similarities, seeing the differences was pretty fascinating, and also brought up a lot more questions for me. So some of those questions are, how does the library do that with that amount of money? Or, you know, these libraries are doing the same things we're doing. So I really appreciate exploring all of these comparative libraries, calling them, looking at their website. It was all very interesting, but overall, I don't think our goal is to mimic 1 or 2 different communities we have on this list. Lisle is unique, I think we all know that, and we want to serve our patrons distinctively the way our patrons want our services. So again, obviously our patrons appreciate our digital media offerings. Our rate is growing. Or we might just be behind the curve. We might be behind that curve of the national plateauing. Or it might just keep increasing. We don't know. Our patrons appreciate our program variety. They are coming to our programs more and more. Our patrons do mimic the national trend of circulation decreasing overall. But again, for the last 2 years, our circulation rates are a little bit better than the national trend. So I think we have to take all of this data and mesh it with our unique needs and with our unique vision for the future. So again, I think we can talk more about these numbers or anything else related to this in future strategic planning discussions, but I did want to provide this information to you prior to more of those meetings. So it's just food for thought.
Great job.
That's
a lot of data.
Yeah, it's been a lot.
Yep, good information.
Thank you.
When you talked to any of these libraries, did they tell you anything about their Friends program or their Foundation program?
I didn't get that deep, but I can definitely do that in the future. If we like what we see here, I mean, again, we can talk more about this in strategic planning meetings, but no, I didn't go there.
Okay.
Are there other questions at this time about the director's presentation? All right.
Good job.
Thank you. Yes, that was very informative.
Thorough, yep.
I know that will be used as the basics for further conversations, as you said, as we move forward. So it's good information.
Lights? Yeah. Thank you, Chris.
And I'm thinking, so because you guys collect this monthly circulation reports, a lot of data, but I think how you kind of boil down to here, to me, it's kind of more informative. I think the level of detail is good. I'm just thinking how consistent basis we'll be able to compare this versus the methodology you're developing here. But I think it's great report. Yeah, thank you.
Any further discussion on this stuff? Then we'll move along to item 9, opportunities for trustee comments. Let's start with Tom this month. Tom, do you have anything?
No, I think I'm good.
All right. Trustee Sullivan?
No, thank you.
Trustee Swisek?
I just want to thank Tatiana for that really detailed and thorough presentation that exceeded anything that I could have hoped to have gotten, so thank you. And then I also wanted to commend staff for Star Wars Reads Day. It was a lot of fun. Mr. Will, trash compactor, huge success. Lots of kids had fun over there, mine included. So I just want to say thanks for that.
Trustee Rank?
I'm good, thank you.
Trustee Bartel?
Good, thank you.
All right, myself, again, I'd like to thank the, we had our quarterly reports in our packets. I'd like to thank the senior staff for that. Those are always helpful and informative. Trustee Flynn? All right. No further business coming before the board. Is there a motion?
I move to adjourn.
There was a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned.